Greetings from Anshe Shalom. I hope I have a chance to see many of you over the course of Shabbat at our tefillot or at our Into the Fields gathering and roving Torah study in the park Shabbat afternoon. Our Torah portion this week, Parsha Teitzeh, is filled with mitzvot, and among them is a verse, Deuteronomy 23, Ki Teitzeh machane al oivecha v'nishmarta mikol davara. When your army encampment goes out to face the enemy, v'nishmarta mikol davara, you shall be very careful to guard against anything untoward or anything evil as this army camp is preparing for battle. Rashi says, why is this special warning, nishmarta mikol davara, relevant particularly as the army prepares for battle? Rashi says, shasatan mikatreg b'shat hasakana. Satan is making accusations at a time of danger. In other words, your life is going to be on the line. It's a risky moment, and this is when you want to have a clean slate, okay? You want God's mercy to fall on you and not on the other team, not on your enemies. And so be extra careful, extra pious. Make sure you stay away from anything forbidden or untoward at a time of preparing for battle, because you need all the merits you can get, because Satan is looking for any excuse when you're vulnerable to danger as at a time of battle. Ramban, this is your third source, if you're following along on the source sheet, says something different, and I think very, very profound and quite relevant to many, many situations in which we find ourselves. He quotes Rashi, as he does, Satan mekatreg b'shat hasakana, Lashon Rashi, v'nachon be'enai. I believe, however, b'inyan ha-mitzvah hazot, ki hakatuv yasir bi'et asher achet matsui. This special warning against anything untoward at a time of battle is picking this moment, because that is the time, the Eight Asher Chet Matzu, that's when people tend to sin. It's known that the customs of armies going off to battle, you'll eat all sorts of disgusting things. They're going to steal, they're going to act with violence against the civilian population that they're among. All sorts of sexual indiscretion and worse that takes place as armies march. All sorts of gross, disgusting things accompany armies on the march. The most upright and ethically sensitive human being clothes himself with violence and rage as an army camp goes against the enemy. And this is why the Torah comes and says, precisely at this moment, be very careful against any untoward thing, any evil thing at a time of war. A time of war is when all sorts of ethical standards slide amongst even very fine, upstanding people. This was true in the ancient Near Eastern context when the Torah was first given to us. It was true in the time of Ramban, and it's true in our times as well. I think there's an implication here, not just for military ethics and codes of conduct for soldiers. I think there's an implication as well in this dynamic the Ramban is pointing to that is relevant really in far beyond the military context alone. Ramban is saying that ethical people, good people, when they're put in a context where they have to deploy violence and act with rage in a confrontational situation, okay, where they're confronting an enemy, that causes ethical sliding, and it requires ethical precautions and extra levels of precaution and accountability and oversight. And it's not because people are bad, it's because even very good people get changed or at a risk of being ethically compromised in situations of violence or rage or confrontation. And I think this insight can really help us get away from some of the facile discussions that I've overheard in recent weeks, in recent days, ongoing conversations in the United States surrounding issues of police misconduct and accountability and protests and riots, and the facile level of this conversation to try to determine who the good people are. And I think that misses the point. In my experience, from what I've read, People who want to become police officers, they do so for very noble and very good reasons. That's why people want to serve their communities in this way. And that's really beside the point, okay? That's really irrelevant. The Ramban is telling us that good, ethical people in situations of violence, in situations of anger, in situations of confrontation, even the best of us need extra precautions, need extra warnings, need extra accountability. V'nishmarta mikol devara. Be very, very careful against anything untoward at these moments where you're most susceptible. Even good people are most susceptible. And we know as well that just identifying a protest as being a protest for a just cause shouldn't excuse unjustifiable violence in the wake of those protests or as excesses of some of those protests. And I think there's a reluctance to kind of acknowledge that. It's awkward. If I believe in the cause, then how can I condemn this violence that seems to be associated with it directly or indirectly, opportunistically or even directly? If the cause is just, if good people are advocating for this cause. And I think Ramban is telling us, no, even very, very good people, they're in a situation of rage and confrontation and anger. Very, very good people need extra degrees of scrutiny, extra degrees of precaution, okay? Precisely, right, because these are the circumstances where very good, ethical people sometimes make really serious mistakes. Okay? The fact that you're a good person fighting for a just cause, like your cause is, no greater and no less just than whatever cause the Torah is saying this Jewish army marching off to battle is going to be promoting. Okay? We all need extra scrutiny in these circumstances where we're prone for ethical lapses. I think there's one more level as well where these words are relevant. The Jewish ethical tradition, the Midrashic tradition as well, sees all of these references to war and battle in the Torah as being metaphors for the struggle against the evil inclination, which is the greatest battle that any one of us takes part in. Bach Ibn Pakuda tells a story of a sage who sees soldiers coming back from battle and says, you've returned from the little battle, but the great war lies ahead of you. That's the war against your evil inclination. That's the war all of us are engaged in this holiday season, this month of Elul, leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. And I think here too, okay, in our battle against the evil inclination, in our battles for self-improvement, in our struggle to be righteous, we need to be careful that we don't become self-righteous, that we don't allow ethical lapses even in our struggle to become better people, because it's so common as well, okay? Because we're struggling and we're fighting, okay, and we're trying to be better, and then someone else's sins bother us, or even own parts of us that are a little more resistant to change anger us, and we can even do harm to ourselves, to our psyches, to our souls, if we're not extra careful to be kind and compassionate and ethical, even in the most righteous and most significant and most challenging struggle of all, the struggle within ourselves to become better. So we all have confrontations ahead of us, and whatever confrontation is ahead of us, nishmar mikol devarav, to be super, super careful at those moments when we feel the adrenaline, okay, when we feel the passion, when we feel the anger, when the confrontation is most acute. That's when we have to be extra, extra sensitive to live up to the very highest levels of ethical conduct, to invite and welcome the greatest degree of oversight and scrutiny and accountability, because that's precisely when we need it, precisely the best of us, as Ramban teaches this week's Torah portion. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat.